Okay. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome. For those that I have not met before, my name is Lori, and I am a business success coach who helps aspiring digital nomads and entrepreneurs to build profitable remote-based businesses that give them the freedom of time and location that they desire and allow them to hit their financial goals in their business within 12 months or less. And today I am joined by Rebeca Seitz, who has worked in the entertainment industry for 17 years. She began as a literary publicist, then founded and led a literary PR firm for 9 years that served numerous NYT bestsellers. In the next 6 years saw her running I don't know if it's SON or Sun Studios in Naples, Florida, and raising several $1 million to support production of culture enriching entertainment content. And along the way, 10 of her books have been published, and she became a #1 Amazon best-selling writer, wrote and produced screenplays, and began writing for leading business publications like Founder magazine. In late 2019, Rebeca followed her passion and launched the 1C Story Network to give life to stories and media that inspire, enlighten, and entertain. Welcome, Rebeca. I'm so excited to have you here.
Wow, thank you.
Please go ahead and just, I guess that's a good synopsis of your story. But if you want to do a little self-intro, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, the thing that most people, the thing that is important to know about me is that I'm a story person. I always have been. I memorized my first story when I was 4 years old. It was Benji Goes to School. I wrote my first one when I was 8, and it was about a magic cornstalk because I was growing up on a farm. So I wrote what I knew. But I just have always been a story lover and a story person. That's kind of how I understand the world and interpret the world, and how I understand my life is through story. So I was really, really fortunate to have people along the way in my life who would kind of guide me down a path to finding out a way to use that skill and that interest to make money and support my family. So that's what I do. I've been really, really lucky to be able to do it for 17 years now in the story industries. Not always in the same media. I mean, I started in book publishing, and then I went into movies and TV, and then added podcasts and magazines. So it runs the gamut of media, but it's all story related. 17 years now in the story.
Oh, sorry.
Not always in the same media. That's okay.
Okay. I'm going to close that. I had Instagram open. So you're probably hearing an echo like, wait, didn't I just say that? Okay.
That sounds smart. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, well, that's amazing. So that's, quite a success story. But, as the title alludes here, today we want to talk about failure a little bit. So I imagine in the 17 years that it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows and all perfect.
It has not. No, the big, yes, there are hiccups along the way, of course, but the biggest one that I point to is you've mentioned Sun Studios. Sun stands for Spirit of Naples, SON. I'm down in Southwest Florida, Naples, Florida. And that was a nonprofit entertainment development company that the board had this big goal of building a $50 to $70 million film studio ourselves. And we spent years of my life working on that goal and helping other people bring their films, television shows, and books to fruition. And we got a lot of things accomplished, but it was almost always a financial struggle to get to the next thing. And that was because we were so focused on that $50 to $70 million project. And toward the end, I always thought that if you are willing to work hard, put in the time, put in the effort, that there's no way something can fail. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And it turns out that's a big fat hairy lie. I mean, that's just not the truth. And so we got toward the end of Sun, and I had exhausted all of the, it was a nonprofit. So I'd exhausted all of the financial resources that I could go to, including my own personal financial resources. And for whatever reason, my board was just not willing to engage in fundraising. They were very focused on and helpful in other areas, but they just didn't feel like that was part of the board's responsibility. And so my one of my board members, I called him up one night and I said, I don't know how we can possibly keep going. We're just, the money's not there, and I can't both run this organization and deal with this problem again. I need you guys' help. And he said, you know what? I think the safest thing is for you to resign. And I had never quit anything. I was like, I don't even know how you do that. Like, what? I don't know. What do you do? And he said, I think that, it's really important that, for the record, he was an attorney. And he said, it's going to be really important that when this thing shuts down, you don't get saddled with all of the bills because you have done everything that you can do. And I said, okay. And I tendered my resignation that night. And I distinctly recall waking up the next morning and thinking, what do I do with my life now? It never dawned on me this wouldn't go. Never dawned on me it possibly could fail. And so I really sank into this just nothingness of, it was the first time since I was 11 years old that I woke up and didn't have a job to go to. I was just like, even if it was a job of my own making, I had been working since I was 11. So I just didn't, it was a really difficult time because I also didn't know anybody who had navigated that. So there was not like a resource I could call up and say, okay, now what? And I didn't have my advisors because my advisors were the board. So I was like, what am I going to do? So it took us some soul searching and about a year for me to really figure out what was coming next. That was in August of 2018. And on December 13th, 2019, I launched 1C. And in that year and a few months is when I fell back to, well, what is it that you have always been about? And that's stories. And what can you do easily? And that's write. So let's get back to writing stories and we'll let it grow from there. And that's when I started writing for Founder magazine. And Founder is, it's an amazing magazine if you're trying to start a business or you're in the middle of scaling up or something like that. And it was kind of like being exposed to a masterclass in how to do business well. Because my job there is that I write the profiles. I get to do some of the interviews, and others, the CEO does them and sends them to me, of these massive CEOs that started YouTube and huge companies, and they're sharing how they built this. And I get to write the articles about it. So I get to really dig deep into, well, what happened when you face this challenge or that challenge. Mm-hmm. And by the end of it, I had learned failure is a part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely.
It just is. And if you haven't had your failure yet, it's not because you're better than the rest of the entrepreneurs. It's just because you haven't had it yet. It's coming.
It's coming. Prepare yourself. Which, I guess let's talk about that. How do they prepare themselves? How did you get through this, and to be able to process the feelings and, maintain that motivation?
Well, I have 2 kids and they like to eat. So that was a big motivation.
Okay, that'll do it.
But really, I wrote about it. I've always processed by writing and by story. And so it was like, how is this a part of a story that makes sense to me? How is this a part of my story, my life? And I started out by, it's actually how I ended up at Founder, was I pitched to them the idea of me writing an article about failing. At that point, I was far enough removed from it. I was 6 months, I think, at that point, removed from it, or maybe 4, I had started digging into what did other founders do when they encountered failure. So I'd learned about Walt Disney having to file bankruptcy, and learning that Walt Disney would never have been Walt Disney but for his brother Roy. Roy handled all of the business aspects of Disney. Walt was very bad at it, very, very bad at it. And Walt Disney would go through a lot of similar experiences to what I was going through at Sun, where the money would run out. And Walt would have to put down the creative and go out and beg for money from people. And it would kill his creativity, which, of course, was the lifeblood of the business. And so the business would inevitably continue going downhill, even though he now had the money because he didn't have the output. And so it was the cycle he had gotten into as well. But he had a Roy who came along, and Roy took over the relationship with the businesses, or with the banks and the investors. And he handled all of that aspect for Walt, so Walt could focus on creating the content. So I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from Henry Ford's life. Ford definitely had failures in his process. Edison, because I'm down here in South Florida, where the Ford and Edison estates are a pretty big deal here. So I looked into Edison's life harder than I ever had, saw all of his failures, and then just started, learning about these modern day CEOs who have failures along the way. I mean, if Steve Jobs can get fired from the company that he created and then get hired back, I was like, why did I think that this was not going to be a part of my life? I'm definitely not any better at this than these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I felt like I had learned something and my world had righted itself enough to where I had taken a job working for someone else, I had a source of income, I reached out to Founder and I said, could I write an article about this? Because I don't see a lot written about this from the perspective of someone who's gone through it. People have written about Walt Disney and about Ford and about Edison, and about Steve Jobs, but not necessarily them writing about their own failure and how it feels. So that was, I think, the start of my climb back out of the difficulty, and how I made sense of it was to start seeing it in other people's stories and seeing that it is an actual element of the story of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is. Before we were chatting, before we went live, and I mentioned, one of my favorite books is The Obstacle is the Way. And that, it's just that, like, failure is one of those obstacles, but if you don't have it, you aren't going to know how to overcome it. And, it's part of the path of every single entrepreneur. I failed several times, in my businesses before, I found success, in these last few years. And if I had given up, I wouldn't be here. And I do, as a business coach, I see so many people that just come and they get so down on themselves when they fail at things. And I, again, just remind them that it's called failing up, if you want to get to that point of growth in your company and in your personal, just in yourself, you have to be able to overcome those.
Yeah, there are skills that you have to have as an entrepreneur to make it, that I don't know how you would get them other than going through a failure, those particular skills. The ability to get yourself out of bed when you don't know what you're going to do that day, to push the ball further down the field, that's a skill that I'd never had to exercise before. Like I said, I had never awakened in the morning without a place to go and a purpose to follow. And so finding the gumption within yourself to go, okay, I've got to identify a new purpose. I've got to identify a new path, and I've got to get on it. That's a skill I wouldn't have if Sun had continued on its trajectory. When Sun failed, I picked that up. I also, it changed for me. I don't know about others. For me, it changed how I do my business relationships. It changed how I conduct myself in them. And it changed what I'm willing to put up with in relationships and what I'm not.
Absolutely.
I have very, very little patience for people that I can see right from the start are not going to pull their load. They're part of the load. It's if you're just here because you want the notoriety of what we're doing, but you don't want to put in the work to be a part of causing that notoriety, then I'm going to need you to scoot. That's not how we do things here. If you want to be a team player and you want to work, let's do it. Get in here and I'll teach you what you don't know and I'll learn from you and we'll do this. But if you're just here because, oh, it's so cool what you guys are doing and I want to be a part of it, well, then you can follow us on Facebook or something.
Exactly. Follow us on social media, but
you learn to, like, I honed that ability to spot that early on now because, I put up with a lot of it. Frankly, at the nonprofit, there were a lot of people that wanted to be a part of this cool thing in town and these cool movie people looking to build this big, big movie studio. And I allowed that to go on for a long, long time instead of saying, okay, well, it's great that you think this is cool. Now, how are you going to contribute to the end goal? How are you going to be a part of this? So I learned so many lessons like that going through it that have proven so helpful in building my current company. It's invaluable.
Yeah. Like just could not agree with that more. So, I guess let's expand on that a little bit, in terms of lessons learned from walking through failure, so that I guess, yes, as much as people are going to have to go through it, if we can share a bit of those lessons with them to maybe save them some pain, what would you say are some of the key lessons that you learned through failing?
Well, like I said, I can definitely get out of something much more quickly, and I don't have any reservations about doing it anymore. It's not, I used to worry about upsetting someone and being mean and difficult and having a reputation and all of those things. And I just don't anymore. I'm much more sold out to, look, we're here to get this accomplished, and let's just get it accomplished. And if you don't want to be a part of getting it accomplished, no problem. I'm not going to take that personally. I used to. Just go over there and do your thing, and I'll go over here and do my thing. So I think it's that thickening of the skin. I always thought I had a really thick skin before. I'm in the entertainment business. You have to. But my skin thickened in terms of who I allow into an inner circle. I do it very purposely now. Mm-hmm. Put a lot of thought toward allowing somebody to be a part of a project and welcoming them in. And then also, in the entertainment business, everything I do, everything we ever do, every project is a gamble. Whether it's a movie, a book, a TV show, podcast, they're all a gamble. Every one of them is a gamble. There are some that I've done that it should have blown up and been huge and went nowhere. And then there are others that I was like, well, this feels almost like a vanity project. It will go nowhere, and it blows up entirely. So that's part of just the joy of being in entertainment. The public is fickle. Sometimes you just don't know what's going to hit. And I'm much more fearless now, because I know if it all goes to heck in a handbasket, that's fine. We'll just build it again. It's my ability to tell stories and my love of stories is not going to die. It's one of the things, one of the first people that I interviewed for Founder, it was a podcaster, Jordan Harbinger. And he had this really, really successful podcast show when he first started out called The Art of Charm. The Art of Charm had millions of listeners before really podcasting was even taking off too well. Mm-hmm. And he built it up teaching men basically how to pick up women. That was kind of the point of the show. He started it when he was in law school, but he had taken on some co-founders, some buddies became partners. It had become this cash cow. And then he got married and his wife got pregnant. And all of a sudden he was like having this realization that one day my little girl is going to ask me what I do for a living. And I'm not real sure I want to tell her that I teach men how to pick up women. So he started trying to pivot the show toward much more of a business show of how to help people, entrepreneurs, mm-hmm. how to help them. And his business partners were having none of it. It was like, why? No, what we're doing is working and it's making us a lot of money. And so we don't care to change this. So he had his Steve Jobs moment. They kicked him off the show, a show he had started by himself and that he had built by himself. And they kicked him out, and they didn't tell any of the audience that they were doing so. So here was this audience of millions posting on their social media, where's Jordan? Why are we not hearing from Jordan? And they had told him they would sue him to Kingdom Come if he tried to say anything and explain what was going on. So he was in a really difficult position. And by this point, he had finished his law degree. And so he thought, well, maybe I just hang it up and I go become an attorney. And he was talking to his wife about it because he was really, and I understand it, he was, personally devastated. Here's this thing that you've given your life to and you've built. And I gave 6 years of my life to Sun. I gave it every dime I had, every dime in my savings, trying to get it going. I had put everything into it, my relationship capital in the business. I mean, I understood what he meant when he said I had put everything into this. And he was just didn't know what to do at that point. And his wife turned to him and said, Jordan, you still have all of your ability that you had when you first started that show. Mm-hmm. And you still have all of your relationships that you had when you first started that show. You know how to do this. Just go do it again. And when he said that to me, that's when something clicked in my mind. And I was like, wait a minute. I still love stories. I still know how to make stories. I still have my friends in this business. I just have to start over. And this time I can be much wiser about it. There are lessons I can mine from this experience. So I mined that failure for every lesson I could find. and then on December 13th, I launched 1C. In large part because Jordan had interviewed with me a few months before, and what he had said just so resonated with me. What his wife said to him so resonated with me. So that was a big lesson I took away from it, of just because something fails, it's not an excuse to allow the imposter syndrome to take over. Exactly. It is, love it. You're still you. You still have the skills you have. You still have the relationships that you have. You still have whatever resources you've got. You still have. Just use them to start over. And I mean, I was 40 years old when all was south. It's not like I was going, oh, there's plenty of time to build something else. I was 40. I was no longer 20.
40 is the new 20.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. So yeah, it was just, what are you going to do? Quit? No, you had
No.
to leave that particular iteration of what you were doing. That doesn't mean you have to leave what you were doing. So lots of lessons I mined there. Lots of them.
Very, very good lessons. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. And yeah, I just
Oh, and I do want to say too, a big one too was I've always been very, very big on honesty, on operating with integrity, and it can be difficult if there were other people involved, like my board or donors who had reneged on their pledges to the tune of $1 million that contributed to this. It can be hard to navigate your end story well, because you don't want to just be like, well, it's all their fault. I mean, I played a role in it too. And their story is not your story to tell. So, I want to acknowledge, yes, it can be really difficult to know how to talk about the failure, especially when you're close to it. But what I found was if you just hang really tight to your integrity and your honesty and your care for the other, taking care of the other, then you'll navigate through just fine. Thankfully, those principles helped me get through the worst of it. Because I was like, the month before this happened, I was in the giant glossy luxury magazine in our area. I was on the radio. I was on television talking about this nonprofit. It was a big, spectacular failure. So yeah, if it is a big, spectacular failure on a big stage, it's okay. You can navigate that as well. Yeah. It's not fun, but you can do it.
You can, exactly. There is almost nothing that can't be overcome. If you want it enough, you can overcome it. So.
Yeah. We had been going through, actually I had this boss, I started out at Thomas Nelson, which is one of the top 10 publishers in the world. Big, they're part of HarperCollins now, big publisher. And I'll never forget one day, my boss who hired me had told me, I'm not hiring you because you have any idea what you're doing, because you don't, but I can teach you skill. I can't teach somebody to love stories the way that you do. So I will teach you the skills of how to be a literary publisher. And my first client, the first author I was handed was Charles Martin, who's now a huge New York Times bestseller, and his novels have been made into movies with giant stars and all that. But at the time, he had never had any book published. I had his first book, The Dead Don't Dance. And this would be my first book as a publicist. And so it was like, okay, don't mess this up. And I read the book and it was so good. And I was just like, I went running into my boss's office near tears. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was freaking out. And she said, what is happening? And I said, like, if I don't do this well, this man has poured months, if not years of his life into this book. And he has brought this book here, and we have taken this book on, and we have spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to publish this book. And now I'm the reason people are going to find out about this book. Like, really? Like, what if I don't do my job well? What if I can't do this? And what she said to me has helped me in so many instances in my career. She goes, Rebecca, this is not rocket science, and we're not doing brain surgery. Stop it. None of what we really do here is going to like save a life or not save a life. It's entertainment. We're okay. At the time that my big failure was happening, some family members were struggling with cancer. And I would say to myself, my brother-in-law had brain cancer. And I would say, it's not brain cancer, Rebecca. It's not brain cancer. Just stop. So it's one of those things of just keeping it in perspective of it feels like the whole world has ended. And it feels like you just need to climb into your big cardboard box and stay there. And you suck at this and you should never come out. But you know what? It's probably not brain cancer. It's probably not rocket science. It's okay. Just pick it up and start over. It's part of the process. It just means you're an entrepreneur. That's literally all it means.
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, I think that's a fantastic place to leave it. It's not rocket science. It's part of being an entrepreneur. So this is
even when it is rocket science, Elon Musk keeps going. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, so it doesn't even matter. So just keep going.
Just keep going.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. So with that said, if you could tell us how people can stay connected with you, how they can, catch some of these shows that you are doing. How do they keep connected?
You can see all the shows we're making at justonec.com. So it's all spelled out, JUSTONEC.com. You'll see all the shows. Or if you want to connect with me, I'm on all the socials, but the one that I actually am on every day myself is Twitter, and I'm Rebeca Seitz 1C there, the number 1, Rebeca Seitz 1C. And my DMs almost always stay open, so you're welcome to connect with me there.
Fantastic. Well, this has been very enlightening and just amazing advice. So for all of you that have joined in, and I guess I didn't actually give any call outs for comments, but you've been very quiet today. And as I predicted at the beginning, people don't like to speak up about failure, but hopefully this has resonated with you, because it isn't that big of a deal. You can move through it. You can recover from this. And Rebeca is a fantastic example just of, how you can do that. So please keep up with her, connect with her on Twitter. And then for those of you who have not yet failed or have come back from failure and are ready to go again, building your businesses, please do join us in our Facebook group if you're not already a member, where you get exclusive access to interviews like this one, insights, just like, again, this interview on Thursdays, as well as various teachings on how to help you build a profitable, scalable, remote-based business of your dreams. And if you know somebody else who can benefit, feel free to join them on our Facebook group here. I'll put it up on the screen. It is the Build and Scale a Profitable Business Facebook group. Looking forward to seeing you there. And Rebeca, I cannot thank you enough. This has been so fantastic.
It is my pleasure. I wish I had some other CEO when I was going through it say, girl, it's part of it. This is part of it. Welcome to the life. So anytime I can do that for somebody else, just don't quit. It's okay. Get back up.
So this one will stay at the top of our list here for ones for people to watch, because we're all going to go through it at some point, and just got to pick ourselves back up and keep going. So on that note, thank you so much. I have enjoyed talking with you, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your day.